All right, guys. So our first panel is on the intersection of DePIN and AI. So AI is definitely one of the hottest sectors, not just in crypto, but in the world right now. So our title of our panel today is "The AI Supply Chain is Broken. Can Crypto Fix It?" So before we dive into the questions, I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves and their companies. So let's start with Mark.
Hello, my name's Mark, co-founder of Aethir. At Aethir, we build distributed GPU infrastructure for gaming and AI companies. You can think of us like an AWS or a Google Cloud, except we focus exclusively on GPUs, and we don't actually own any of the GPUs in our cloud. Everything in our network is enterprise grade. We only aggregate equipment that sits in T3, T4 data centers. We don't touch gaming PCs or MacBooks or anything like that. But we service and resurface those GPUs into our cloud to make them available for AI and gaming companies that need them.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Eren, and I'm the head of operations from Reborn AGI. So what we do as Reborn is that we're an open ecosystem to achieve AGI robots. We provide a platform to gather massive human motion data and transform human intelligence to our data model training, as well as solving the critical gaps in data, in embodiment gaps, as well as the model gap. So a very fun, interesting robotics project, very few in the Web3 space, and give us a follow. And I'm really happy to be here today. Thanks for inviting me.
I think I'll take this one. 1, 2, yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Sebastian. I run Impossible Cloud Network Foundation. We're roughly 70 people, have close to 5 million recurring revenue. And what we do is we build what we call the evolution of the cloud, which is permissionless, composable, and truly open. And we also have enterprise-grade hardware only. And we have one use case right now, which is S3 object storage. And in the future, we plan to be multi-service.
So I'm going to hang on to this mic so if you guys could pass amongst yourselves. So let's just start by saying, AI is undoubtedly the hottest sector in tech right now. What do you guys think is the most promising vertical for AI, and how do you think it's going to impact everyone's lives? Maybe start with Sebastian.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So I think what's actually a bit underrated with AI these days is actually physical AI. So everybody's so obsessed with software-based models. Like when you look at the real world out there, right? So you have automation in distributed logistics. You have obviously manufacturing automated. You have so many things that are related to physical things that where I think it's a bit underrated, which will become more and more important going forward because it's specific use cases, right? And actually, decentralized technologies can actually facilitate a lot of that. Why? Because it's has that unique advantage of being very easily scalable, meaning you can offer edge performance. So exactly for those use cases, smart logistics, all these types of things, you need distributed edge technologies. Like AWS has 30 data centers around the world. If you want to have enterprise-grade services, at some point latency becomes a question, and this can only be facilitated with decentralized architecture.
Yeah, I have the same view as you. So it's not from me or you. Actually, Jensen Huang, the CEO from NVIDIA, he said the next wave of AI is physical AI. But there are challenges. So what is the biggest challenge for physical AI? Data. For LLMs, there's a lot of existing data on the internet we can actually look for OpenAI to actually learn from. But for physical AI, we don't have the existing data. For example, if you want a robot to perform a certain action or to learn from a certain action, what you need is something called episode. An episode is like, if I grab this mic for a 3 to 5 second video, that's an episode. And this is something that we don't have enough available globally yet. So currently we have around 2.4 million of episodes in physical AI. And what do we need is at least 10 billion of episodes. That's what we're doing. We are gathering human motion data by selling our motion capture device to crowdsource people and incentive them to wear the motion capture device and provide their valuable data to us to solve the major gap in physical AI.
Yeah, I think the question was, what is the most interesting vertical for AI, right? I think another way to phrase that is like, who's going to lose their job first, right? And I think it's a very interesting space, in particular for knowledge workers at the moment. Microsoft just laid off around 7,000 people just a few days ago. I've got a great friend who works at one of the big consulting firms, one of the youngest partners in the history of the company, and she's just pivoted into AI, right? She doesn't see a future for herself in that sector. It's a difficult place to be for anyone that's in the knowledge space. And I think if you look through that lens, right, and you look at how AI will start to kind of change and adapt to those sectors, I think it's far less likely that we're going to be disrupting those sectors through just heavily generalized models, right? Those seem to have a little bit of a ceiling on how accurate they are in solving kind of the pointier problems that exist in those spaces. So it ends up becoming more of an orchestration problem, right? An agent problem. How can you specialize models, maybe smaller models, to be more effective at that specific type of work? And when you start to get to that side of the problem, then all of a sudden the availability of data becomes a bottleneck, right? How quickly are we able to train these expert models on these specific types of problems? And those questions are really the ones that are going to dictate like which sectors are going to be most affected most quickly. I think it's pretty obvious at the moment that code assistant style products are incredibly performant, and that's because we have a whole bunch of code to train those code assistants on, right? So it makes sense that that's a vertical that's going to be disrupted really, really early. So I think the tech sector is getting its butt kicked a little bit right now. That's probably not going to change, but I think disruption will correlate to how available good data is within that sector.
Awesome. Eren and Mark just touched upon like kind of my second question around data for AI. So in the era of AI, there's a saying that data is the new oil. Providing high quality, almost proprietary data sets is super important for AI. But there's like a spectrum of data, right? There's generally available data that's easily scrapable off the internet. Maybe there's data that's around behind a paywall or behind a user login. And there's data that just simply doesn't exist even in any database right now, which is kind of like the untapped market for data, right? So question for both Mark and Eren. Maybe double click on that. Like what data is generally available in the physical AI space? What's highly sought after and what's kind of the holy grail? And maybe Mark, you can talk about like data maybe for general LLMs in that regard.
Yeah, I think the anecdote that most people would be familiar with is that all of the big models, all the frontier models that are out there at the moment have been effectively trained on all of the publicly available data, right? We've kind of capped out on how smart we can make these models based on just what's easily accessible out there. And that's kind of this like general intelligence cap that we kind of have. Now we're very much more interested in what is the data that is going to be most valuable for that next step, right? And that data exists in usually gated communities, right? Places that scrapers are not easily able to access. Social media like Twitter, Reddit. I think OpenAI just did a big partnership with Reddit to get access to their data. We're very aware of the data lakes that exist with Google and YouTube, right? And Tesla with all of the data that they're generating through their fleet of vehicles. I think there's going to be, again, this huge correlation between performance of models and where they're plugged into from a data perspective. And I think the DePIN sector as a whole kind of has a really interesting role to play here, right? Because we can generate and scale data accessibility in a way that would be really difficult, very, very expensive to do in a centralized manner. This is, I think, exactly what Reborn are doing with very hyper-specific robot necessary data. But yeah, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, Mark mentioned one thing that Tesla is hiring, we call it operators in their Optimus factory to around 5,000 people so far. And how much are they paying them? They're paying them $48 per hour to wear the motion capture suits. and to teleoperate the robots. And if you go to Figure X, the largest robotics company, on their career website, they are also hiring people with $45 base rate to teleoperate and wear the motion capture suits. So how does it work? For physical AI, we classify the data into two types, two categories. Number one is real-world data. This is something that LLMs does not need. Real-world data includes motion capture data, or if you wear a VR set and use the VR to do some controlling or manipulation, this is another type of real-world data. And lastly, video data. For example, if I use my phone to take a video of them making a coffee, technically this could be a useful data for the simulation or for robotics to learn as well. However, it's not as effective as motion capture or VR data. So Reborn, we focus on the first two. So again, classifying the data into first real-world data, and second is simulation data. And this is actually the hard part, because what we do need to do is integrate the real-world data into simulation. And that's what Tesla Optimus did. They actually posted a video yesterday about dancing with some really cool movements. What they did is they integrate the real-world data of a human dancing into their simulation. And the simulation give it a target. And they trained in the simulation with a faster speed, maybe 100 times faster than real world, and use reinforcement learning to finally achieve the target for the robots to do the same movements, and then deploy it back to the robot. This is called sim to real, simulation to real application. So this is the biggest difference for physical AI.
Awesome. The next question.
I'm gonna
yeah, absolutely.
I got a funny
Riff,
anecdote.
riff.
I was chatting with the Reborn team just a couple of days ago, and these sensors that they have, you wear them across your body, and they record movement, and obviously do it in a way that's really valuable for AI. And it was kind of funny, right? These devices are being manufactured. It almost makes the most sense to just not sell the first 10,000 and just give them to the factory workers so they can wear them while they're making more of the sensors that are going to go out, right? Because this is like monetization of movement, right? Spatial data. Anyone that's out there doing a kind of a physical labor job can now strap these devices onto their workwear and earn for just moving in the real world. Yeah,
as the actions of robots get more, micro, the dexterity of like the sensor readings have to get more micro as well, right? So it's interesting to see all the new data being collected for physical AI. To continue the analogy, if data is the new oil, then just like raw oil, raw data is really unusable if it's not refined and processed. So this is really where infrastructure comes in, right? The GPUs, the cloud servers, the services that AI builders need to not only aggregate and source data, but then refine it and feed it into AI model training sets. So let's start with Sebastian. Like how important has infrastructure been to the rise of AI to date, and where do you see us going from here?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think it's not always looked at from the Web3 perspective properly, I would say. What do I mean by properly? All the way to the actual hardware, right? So there's a few distributed or decentralized GPU projects out there, right? Like Aethir. We do a similar thing. So how I view this is, if you look at AWS, they said that they're going to spend 100 billion on CapEx this year, and still that same AWS said that they're likely not going to be able to fulfill demand, right? So if you let those figures sink in, 100 billion, it's a lot of money, and still with that, you're not going to be able to facilitate all of the demand that's inbound, right? So guess where that demand's going? It's going to go to other decentralized projects, in my humble opinion. So if we take that as face value, plus that Microsoft pack, by the way, 3% of the workforce, that's a lot of money, and that they save, again, is a bit of a PR in there, obviously, but some of that obviously goes into their CapEx needs for scaling infrastructure. Again, here's where decentralized infrastructure can come and facilitate things. So you have those scalability limits, right? So you can scale exponentially. And then two, it's usually done in hubs around the world. So you have these 30 hubs that I mentioned already with AWS. Funnily enough, some of these can scale further because of electricity and cooling needs. So again, here's where decentralization can come in. Okay, so let's take those strains on the network away, put it in a more distributed way, and scale networks accordingly that way. That not only reduces those strains, but two, it enables the edge performance that I mentioned initially, right? So all of this, these use cases that you mentioned as well, they need to be facilitated somewhere. They need to be run somewhere. And that can be done with decentralized infrastructure. And that's what we see also for us coming in. That's some of the tailwinds from the industry are starting to come to our infrastructure needs. And I think that if you do that in the right way, if you set it up, I think we have the foot in the door. Now we just need to go the next step and actually scale accordingly, right? So we have hundreds of customers using our infrastructure already. And with these new tailwinds, with these scalability limits, with the advantages from decentralized systems, we could actually leverage AI in a much more open way, in a democratized way for everybody, and not permissioned by a few companies that say, yes, we do this, yes, we do that. In a decentralized way, it's a bit different. So I think that's where DePIN as an industry can come in.
Yeah, maybe I'll take a step back, right? Why are GPUs relevant to the AI sector? And apologies if everyone's kind of aware of this already, but Google released a paper a while back, over a decade, called "Attention is All You Need." Right? In that paper, they described this new model architecture, a transformer architecture, and effectively what they demonstrated was a form of kind of parallel processing for data that really aligned with the type of processing that GPUs were able to do, right? Previously, the way that you read data in older kind of machine learning models was a little bit more kind of word by word, almost reading like a human. And in the kind of new transformer architecture version, things were able to happen kind of in parallel, right? It rapidly sped up the ability for these models to kind of function. And it created this really interesting dynamic, right? Where effectively, the more GPUs you were able to add to this equation, and the more data you were able to add to this equation, you had this kind of linear progression, called the data scaling law. Essentially, this linear progression of kind of performance, where you kind of knew 1 + 1 equaled 2, right? And if you had more GPUs and more data, you could win that race faster. And this was like a really simple thing for tech companies to understand, really simple thing for capital markets to understand. Okay, if we fund this company more, if we give them deeper pockets, if we give them more access to GPUs, they can win this race faster. That's why we're seeing bigger venture rounds in these AI companies than we've ever seen ever before. And it's primarily because we know that money is the reason you win this race. We're reaching some kind of caps now, and those caps are pretty crazy caps, right? No more publicly available data in the world, right? Pretty ridiculous cap to have reached so quickly. We're reaching a global power supply cap, right? There's literally not enough power in the world's power grid to satisfy the growth that we expect to see within the sector over the next kind of couple of years. And there's just literally not enough data centers, right? There's literally not enough physical real estate to plug these high-performance chips in to, again, power what is needed. So effectively, and you could probably say that NVIDIA saw much of this coming, but I think a lot of it's also largely luck, right? NVIDIA was a gaming company, and it just so happened that GPUs were very effective at parallel processing of kind of pixels, and that worked quite well with this new transformer architecture. But GPUs are the engine that powers AI, for better or worse. And the more GPUs you have, the quicker you're going to be able to deliver on highly performant AI.
Just to add on top of that, I 100% agree with your views on that. And data scaling law basically means the more the data, the more diversified the data, and the higher quality the data means the better the outcome. As simple as that. And computing power is the infrastructure for generating data. And me personally, this is out of off topic, but me personally, I invested heavily in NVIDIA like 2 years ago, and it really, really grew exponentially. But for all of you who are, what's the next step? Because a lot of people think NVIDIA today is a little bit overpriced because of the hype, right? What usually, what I look at is in the next 10 or 20 years, if you feel like computing power, NVIDIA is something that might be overhyped, you can look more downstream. What I looked at been looking into recently is electricity, power supply companies, because I personally estimate or predict that there will be a power shortage very soon in the next 10, 20 years. We'll see electricity cost going up due to the huge demand in computing powers. But this is off topic.
Yeah, it's certainly, crypto and DePIN can help provide very valuable resources to AI, data, compute, hardware, electricity, things like this. So let's say that, DePIN and crypto do enable AI, and we reach this kind of AGI future, right? There's both extreme optimism and extreme pessimism for this new future, this new reality. AI has the potential to solve the world's biggest problems, cure cancer, explore new elements on the periodic table, help us get into space, things like this. But also, in the wrong hands, could destroy our world as we know it and society as we know it. So what camp are you guys in? Are you guys optimists or pessimists about the AI future, and why?
Yeah, I've had to stop talking about this with my mom and dad and my siblings. They wonder how I can kind of work in this space and still share such pessimistic articles with them. I wouldn't say I'm a doomer per se, but I am, I guess, hyper aware of some of the limitations around what we call alignment, right? The ability to ensure that AI acts with interests that are adjacent to what people might want. I think if anyone here has even just been playing around with ChatGPT over the past kind of 3 months or 2 months, right? The O3 model is insane. It's such a kind of a quantum leap from the performance of the models that kind of came before. I mean, I don't know if you've ever played with it, but you can take a photo and put that photo into O3, and you can say, where am I? And it will CSI, zoom in on these little things, read text in the corner of the image, and measure shadows and shit, and it will work out where you are. And it's even videos. It's mental. And I think if you were to time travel someone from 2020, right, and put them in a white room and give them access to O3 and say, is this AGI? I think the majority of them would have said yes, right? But we're kind of like the frog in the well at the moment, right? And the water is kind of slowly heating up, and we're not really aware of the fact that we're cooking. And it's a really weird and interesting space to be in, right? Because we know how detrimental this is. It's an existential threat if we get it wrong, but we also know that the winner of this race effectively wins everything, right? If you get to AGI first, you get everything forever, right? There's no competitor. You can't get AGI the second time and then catch up, right? The company that gets AGI first then has a forever lead, right? And they effectively become the king of the universe. Right, if AGI is aligned, otherwise we're all just in a bit of trouble. But long story short, no one wants to slow down, right? Because the risk of slowing down is that someone else comes in and gets there first, right? China gets there before the U.S. or Google gets there before OpenAI. Whatever frame of reference you want to look at the race through, no one wants to kind of miss out. I think, from an optimistic kind of perspective, one of the things that I am positive about is that, at the very least, I think we can be pretty confident that the most performant AI is being built in public, right? It's being built in companies like Google, OpenAI, Anthropic. It's not being built in the basement underneath the Pentagon. It's not a Manhattan-style project, right? We're not missing some super capable AI, in the backwaters of some strange country that we don't really want to have AGI, right? So at the very least, we know who all the players are. They are publicly releasing models. I think it is a publicly relevant topic to talk about AI safety to at least a certain degree. And whilst I don't think anyone is going to yet really put a throttle on what they're building, because I think the opportunity cost is too high, despite the fact that that cost is literal human extinction. It is still not something that I'm super pessimistic about. I don't know. It's tough, right? Like you go and you ask any of the top AI researchers, worldwide, they'll tell you, okay, 30% chance of human extinction in the next 10 years. That's the number. You ask them that question again a year later, okay, 30% chance in 8 years. And you're like, so this is getting a little bit closer now. I was like, what are we doing about that? Well, we're getting better at making AI faster. I was like, okay. So, yeah, I don't know. Long story short, it's a bit of a weird space. On one side, you've got total utopia. On the other side, you have, an existential threat. But overall, optimistic. Yeah, otherwise I'll just go buy a house in Thailand and hide. Yeah, if you're working, you have to be optimistic.
Okay, really love your answer, Mark, and I'm a bit more pessimistic than you. Pessimistic, yeah. I want to start out by sharing a video that went viral that I watched yesterday. It was a professor in his class. He was crying and shouting to all his students, saying, why is everyone using ChatGPT to give me the answer of this paper? Literally every single person in his class. He's crying, he has tears down, because he said, how are you going to learn if you all use ChatGPT to generate your answer? This is the first video I want to share. Second thing that I want to share is a viewpoint from Justin Sun, the founder of Tron. He said that AI is at least as risky as uranium or nuclear power, at least, or even more. He used one small example, DeepSeek. You can't even imagine how much damage DeepSeek could cause to the teenagers today if you swap a face onto someone else's video, use it for bullying or any other purpose. This is the least dangerous thing that he can think of, not to mention all the unpredictabilities. So two risks overall for AI to me is, number one, the unbounded capability growth. Because AI, in terms of reasoning, in terms of its intelligence, once it surpasses our human level, we don't know what's going on anymore, and what it's leading us anymore. And this day is coming much sooner than we think. It's very unpredictable and it's uncertain, and this is not what I like as a human being for our humanity. And number two is misalignment in tasks. So misalignment in tasks is that when human beings, we give an AI a not very specific goal or target, that they might do some actions without considering the broader background in order to achieve that goal, which might cause some irreversible damage to society, to finance, or even to humanity or our civilization. And these are the two major risks that I can think of right now. Thank you.
So I'm not going to join the club. I mean, fun fact, I actually just picked up carpentry because I kind of like it. It gives you a meaning. You build something and then it's there. AI can't just yet do that. No, in all seriousness, I think that generally we all need to take a breath and relax. This is not going to come overnight. Yes, it's very fast and it's speeding up, but you're not going to wake up one day or like tomorrow, right? It's a process. It's a process, okay? So we all will adjust, right? So actually, it's a funny anecdote. In my high school, I remember we had this. We had to come up with this case study of invent something and put it on a piece of paper. This was English class, right? So I'm based in Switzerland and in school. Anyway, so it was a one-pager that I had to write on some invention that we came up. And I actually came up with something where an autocorrection tool. So my father's a teacher, and I wanted to make his life easier. So I invented this this pen, which basically with a lens takes up all the writing, and then it autocorrects it on a computer. That's possible today, literally, right? So that's what, a couple of decades ago, where that becomes a reality. So it's, again, it's not going to come overnight. Yeah. So number one. Two, like humans in and of itself will always adjust. So it's not everybody is obsessed with ChatGPT. There's some people that still do write. There's people that still learn, right? I still try to learn a language, although probably it's pointless. So that's number two. And then three, maybe coming back to decentralization and while we're all here, I think what's really important, and that's something I think the majority of us can get behind, is who's building this AI, right? So if you think about it, right now, most of the services run on NVIDIA technology, which is, again, run by centralized providers. And that's where I think, again, I'm coming back to this, decentralization allows us a level playing field. So you don't have to go to these big tech providers. You don't have to invest whatever 100 billion a year. It's basically there for you, and if you build on top of that, I think it's an open approach to things rather than a centralized approach. So imagine all of these things, all of these ideas, and all of these are not only, they're out there, but they're controlled by a few people, right? So it's a bit shaky, right? So if technically overnight AWS decides that they don't like Switzerland or whatever, Europe anymore, done, right? Business down, that's that. It's a bit more integrated than that. But what I'm trying to say here is that what we have to focus on is an open and a level playing field for everybody to operate in. And then I think over time people will adjust and make the right decisions.
Awesome, guys. So hopefully that was not too pessimistic of a start to the morning, but I want to thank our panelists for sharing their insights on AI. I think in summary, blockchain has a really important role in the evolution of AI, not to really, make things faster, but slow things down and make them more deliberate in the way that we build this out and provide the resources that AI needs to really succeed. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.